Please welcome, direct from the first ever night of the Inspired Word, our very own Diana Arnold, everybody.
Hi, it's true. I'm still here 7 years later. Yeah, I am Diana Arnold. This is Bobby McCullough. We are so pleased to be here with you guys tonight, and I just want to thank all of you guys for getting here, whatever it took for you today to get here in this room, in this city, at this time. I am grateful that you did it. On this day especially, where we honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. A great orator, a man who used speech to affect change and peace, a man that I wish was still around and alive today, and he is through us, and he lived a life of service, and this is something I've been thinking a lot about. And he said there can be no great disappointment where there is no great love. And I don't know about you, but I find myself a little bit disappointed lately. And that can lead to a lot of fear and a lot of anger. And when that happens, I just try to focus on why and how I love what I love, to get back to that a little bit. So in the last 7 years, I was thinking, like, what have I been doing? And it turns out I've been working. So I thought we could just talk about that a little bit. Tonight you'll get to hear what your waitress has to say without having to tip. So be kind, this is all brand new, and we really, really hope that you enjoy it. Fact. So much of life is about in which section you get sat. I was born into a family where my dad was handicapped. A doozy. Cerebral palsy. Your brain is sort of fine, but you walk weird and you talk funny. And I swear that's like still the extent of my knowledge about it. It's still what it was to me when I was a kid. My dad walks weird and talks funny. I don't really understand what he says. I don't introduce him to my friends. He's different than the other parents. I was so acutely aware of this. And I am the youngest. And my dad was a genius, and this birth defect is not degenerative, but life is hard on the spirit, isn't it? Especially when your body doesn't respond as fast as your brain does. I imagine seeing yourself differently mentally and physically than the world does. Well, I imagine a lifetime of that would be tough. And so I think I got my father at his weakest. And it's a shame that we don't remember what we were like as children. You know, maybe there are pictures that can help us access then, but it's a shame that we cannot remember that feeling of pure bonding and innocence, right? When you had no questions, when your little baby brain just accepted what was. I don't have any visceral memories of that, of the bonding occurring. I don't once remember feeling comfortable around my dad. It all got blurred and buried by my consciousness. His physicality just scared me as a kid. And I tried to keep that deep in. And so I always looked at every experience from the outside in, what my experience was, and then how others would see it. I've always had such a strong sense that there are so many moments that can come from one moment. And I want to think as a kid that I was the same, right? That I was bold and generous, a performer, a ham. But I wasn't. That stuff came late. My mom tells me that I was actually really shy and afraid. And maybe because they were boys for my brothers, it was okay, but from the jump, from birth, I always saw my father as other. And I know that that's normal, because he was. And I don't blame myself. I was a kid. But how did I know that? How did I know to think of it as anything else but my dad? I mean, when was the shift? How come I was never afforded a time of innocence, void of circumstance? When did I decide to look at and feel every situation from every perspective? How did I become, or was I just born, sensitive? How did I know my dad was in so much need, more than me? I guess it doesn't matter, because it's only now that I see that I am 31 and I don't trust anyone. And I don't want to be like that anymore. So my mom came over because I was getting us some weed delivered, but by coincidence it also just happened to be Christmas, so we wound up exchanging some gifts. My family, what's left of it, is now only getting good at receiving things. I think sometimes when you don't have money, and we didn't, well, sometimes you can get bad at giving. And I mentioned this, and I said, Mom, we were pretty happy. You got lucky. You had some pretty good kids. She says, yeah, I did. And I said, well, what were some of our conversations like when I was a kid? Well, you didn't need much. Really? I felt like I did. I probably was so concerned about Dad's needs that with my own I had to be more selective. Yeah, you never really connected to him. You were a part of things, Diana, and you did what you knew a daughter should do, but inside I think that you were a little scared of him, too. You knew? Well, you would come up to me and say, Mommy, don't die. Don't go, Daddy won't be able to take care of us the way that you do. And he was a great guy, but his physicality, I knew in the world that he was different. I just knew that he wouldn't be accepted. It's not your fault. How come you guys didn't help? Why didn't, when you first noticed this, even though I was correct, why didn't you two try to pay a little more attention to it? She says, you seemed fine. She says, you knew how to be present. You knew how to be part of a thing, in the living room with all of us, but also not really a part of it all at the same time. And it hits me. Christmas morning, it hits me. This is what I am still doing. Right? This is why I am so good at my job. This is why I am so well suited to waitressing. I can be ever present on the dining room floor, right? I can be always part of and not part of a thing. I am at your table, but I am not at your table. I understand duality. I've made it my career. Actually, this is what service is to me. I know what you need before you need it. And I've had my own experiences Okay, I've got my own taste. I never push anything. My presence just influences it. And I get it. Like, I get why I'm good at it. And an eighth of weed later, I'm not even mad about it. I take care of my table so well. And yet I've never felt taken care of before by anyone, really, besides myself. But in the last 2 years, there's been a shift. Like, my job feels different, like, more important. And I've distilled it. It's because after not being taken care of in all of these restaurants for all of these years, I finally work for someone who does. And it has absolutely changed how I work. I am better than I have ever been. Okay, it has changed how I live, and that is because I work for someone who gives. A love letter to my boss. I have never worked harder for anybody else. Not once. I never had the trust. I never thought that if I did my best, it would actually be appreciated. You know, I never believed in the ones making the decisions. But I agree with every single thing that you have ever said or that you have ever done. And you're human. In this way that is so important, I think, for employees to see. I can't come in and do the bare minimum. How can I? You aren't. I walk into work and you are hard at work making your mark on the world. At table 20, at 4:30, I get to see you achieving your dreams. And you're doing that is helping me achieve mine. And that kind of symbiosis, the way I love to learn from what my boss notices, comes around very few times in a lifetime. This job has changed my life. I am born to do this. Not just waitress, but now it's evolved into something more, because in the West Village of New York City, I work the door. I greet 300 strangers a night, 5 nights a week. Could I be any more lucky? No. No, I couldn't be. But I've been doing the same thing for so long. What happened? What changed? I have always been a waitress. For 15 years, since the second day I arrived here, these shifts, these doubles for decades, these 6 nights a week shifts, why now am I just beginning to experience the joy of it? Well, I think what happened is the only difference that there ever is. There has always been joy. I'm now just able to be aware of it. I walk in, I clock in, and there has been a running monologue in my head through every shift. If I don't write about it, it won't be worth it. If I don't write about it, it won't be worth it. If I don't write about it, it won't be worth it. But I'm so tired when I get home. From hours of being on the dining room floor, from hours of absorbing that when I get home, I don't want to write about it anymore. You know, Woody Allen has this great line in one of his films, Deconstructing Harry, I think. He's with a hooker. And he's like, "So, how'd you get into this sort of thing?" And she goes, "Sure beats the hell out of waitressing." Okay, I think about that, right? Like, I have the job that nobody wants to have. I have the job where you want to be on the receiving end. Or you would rather be on the other side. And I don't know why or what it is about me exactly, but I see that as an advantage. I'm very good at making the most of what I'm given. I didn't go out to eat much as a kid. There was one place though, right? There always is. No matter how shitty growing up is, there is somewhere for everyone. There's somewhere you went with your mom once. Or a breadstick that changed your 3-year-old life. There is a diner on the side of the road somewhere where you never went, but your dad used to go. There is a waitress who winked at you online in the bathroom when you were 12, or it's the way that your grandmother's kitchen smelled. But there is a dish somewhere, I promise, or a taste, or a flavor, or a texture, or a waiter that awakened something in us, triggered, brought up that intangible sense of belonging, of comfort, of love. And we eat out in this city every night to try to get a little bit of that back, right? For like an hour and a half. And if you sit in my section, I know that. And what happens after that is up to us. You know, you might think it's too expensive here or just not care for me very much, and then it can all fall apart. But if you sit in my section, you get me. And that's a pretty good place to start.
Yeah.